Hello, this is Rabbitt. This video is going over my Pro package for X-14 templates. We're in X-14 beta right now. We've already had our first release of updates to this particular template. It's really working well. This video should be applicable to both standard and Pro. There's a few things that are in the Pro package that are not in the standard package, but that shouldn't deter you. A lot of the function is still the same. Biggest difference being that there's a lot more CAD details in the Pro package and a few other items that you get for your library. I want to dive in. It's kind of hard to cover all ground because we've got to jump around a bit to explain different features within this template workflow. First up, I want to say that included in this package and paramount to the success of this template working really, really well and getting you excited about using it is that we need to have installed a new versus existing wall toolbar. And you'll see that you've got a zip file. That's a new versus existing wall toolbar zip file. There's a couple icons in there. We're going to take a look at these icons real quick. They're really easy to see here in my toolbar. That's my new wall, my new interior wall, I should say, and my new exterior wall. Now, I won't get into how exactly these work. If you know how to use wall types at all, it should be pretty self-explanatory. Basically, the existing walls live on their own layer, new walls live on their own layer, and the fill style is driven by those. Now, you'll notice something about my particular walls is that I've got solid fill through and through. I do not show layers. Even though the show layers is checked, everything looks like it's one solid item. So that if we draw a line, you'll see that I actually do get to snap to that main layer, even though that main layer looks like it's invisible. It is there. This is just a preference for me. It's a very clean look. So on a print set, it looks very, very clean. Most of my builders know exactly what kind of construction I've got. And I also happen to have in the CAD Details a wall legend to explain what kind of construction there is there. So if you need to break these out and change these, that's not a problem. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and just delete these items right here, and I'm going to show you what it looks like to draw with my new exterior walls. Here we go. We're in a working plan view. Now, the name of that saved plan view is working because, well, that's where I expect you to do most of your work. And that's why we've got some pretty bright colors here. This is really kind of helpful for just distinguishing between new versus existing. And I will say it's very, very easy to just go into your object properties or your Aldo and on the fly, change the color fill as you please, whatever you may like for a color fill. And it will drive that new wall color. Same with the existing wall colors. So if I draw some existing walls out, I can also draw my new interior wall out and change this on the fly. And that's going to remain whatever color that layer that this wall may be on. So if you click on this and click in your object properties again, there we go. There's that color of that layer. Very easy to come in here and change it to whatever color you may like. And there we go. Now, something that's really crucial about this is I made these bright and colorful for a reason. It's very nice and easy to see your new versus existing and a new versus existing workflow. Now, not everybody needs that workflow. A lot of you may be buying my templates just for the new construction aspects of it, which, that's fine as well. This is just going over some of those remodel sections here, the remodel features of this template. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a print set, which would be like a floor plan. And you're going to see here, immediately we see some new things here. Those walls kind of conform to a new versus existing typical print set. Now, of course, you can make this a dark gray if you don't want to be burning through your black ink. It makes total sense to me. So let's go look at some of the other features of these saved plan views. We've got 4 working plan views. You're going to see there's a working plan view construction lines, which you can already see these construction lines up here. And we'll go over that just a little bit later, how I like to use these construction lines. I have a particular workflow that I use when I'm setting these up. So I have a working plan view just for those construction lines. It's also helpful for me to review with clients when I have construction lines to tell people to look between certain quadrants. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. Now let's drop down into our working plan view furniture layout. And let me open up my library and I'm going to search a couch and just drop this in so we can see what this looks like. And it's as simple as that. This is just to work with furniture. This switches to a dimension default. You're going to notice one thing about my plans is there's only one active default or default set. There's only one. You may be used to a bunch of those. I don't use them. I drive everything from saved plan views. So something that happens when we switch to this working plan view for the furniture layout is that we get some new dimension defaults. Now, it still will dimension across and not touch that couch here, but if I switch to, say, a interior dimension default, you're going to see it's going to dimension that couch. So very quickly, we can dimension a couch if we need to. We can dimension the furniture, place that furniture. It's very easy to open the string up and go and define, and then you can get into that locate interior. And if you need to change this from sides and corners to centers of furniture, easy to do that really quickly and on the fly. And of course, I offer training and tutorials. If you need some help, just reach out to me. Let's go ahead and switch to working plan view, roofs only. You're going to see we've got auto roofs turned on by default. And what that means is it's just showing us, well, for one, it's showing us our new walls in kind of a bold section. And that's helpful if I really want to kind of line some new versus existing roof planes up with my new walls, or maybe I'm paying attention to bearing walls. But this is where I need to do my manual roofs if I need to get into that. The other thing that I do is sometimes I just turn on my roof planes layer in my working plan view. Let me drop down to the redline review section. Now, the redline review section is what I use when I want to collaborate with other users, or if I want to take notes during a meeting. And so what I'll do is I'll open up this camera, and this camera is built specific to drop notes in while we're doing a meeting. So that as I fly through here and I've got a meeting with a collaborator or another a designer or a client, if you will, then it's really easy for me to kind of navigate around and take notes as we go. And the great part of this is if I get into my notes, what ends up happening is we can have these bind to elevations in 3D, right? We can have these bind to objects if we want in 3D. So what I typically do is I will just type in my note in the text above line section so that we know this needs to be edited. And check this out. Isn't that cool? Now, if you need to, on the fly, everything in my templates is built using normal text. I do not use rich text. So a big part of this is if we don't want to see such bold typing here, it's really easy to get into this red lines and just change it to a different text size. There we go. Very, very quick and easy to edit all text within my plan. All you need to do is change the text style. I don't use any rich text. This makes it easy to do print sets at any number of different print sizes, you name it. So this is what the red line is for, the red line review. So if we get it back into that saved plan view, you're going to see here, we get a note schedule, and this is going to show us exactly what we need to see and what we may need to address. And this is the only place that those are going to show up, so that if we switch back to working plan view or even one of our print sets, we're never going to see that red line. It's only going to be on that red line review saved plan view. And that camera is going to live here as well. You can see that camera is still open. So I'm going to close that down. Now there's a couple things here. There's a couple links here that you may want to use. And as we get in close here, what you're going to see is this is just giving you an example of the icon that you should be looking for. So that if I wanted to go find a seamless texture, all I needed to do is click on this text box once, and in my edit toolbar, which is usually at the bottom of your screen, go ahead and click on that follow hyperlink. Let me just zoom in on this real quick. Follow hyperlink, and what that'll do is bring up a window, and it's going to bring you to my restrictive searches that I have built into my website. These are really powerful tools. If you're not familiar, let's just do a quick one. We're going to look for a leather texture, and you're going to see here very quickly we're going to get a bunch of different leather textures that we could get. So very fast and easy way to do a chief architect search, a model search, or any kind of building code lookup. So that lives on your redlined saved plan view. Now let's take a look at some of the other sets here. We're going to see an electrical plan set. This is exactly what you would think it to be. The only thing that I will tell you is that I don't always use electrical connections. Oftentimes I use lines instead, so that if I right click and do a continuous draw mode, very easy for me to get a dynamic looking line here. The other thing I like to do is I like to just draw out that, draw out that line, and then I can click on it again, right click it and bend it if I need to. Use that continuation and bend it again if I need to. So pretty dynamic way of drawing electrical connections if you don't need the automatic switching tools that come from using electrical connections. So there you go. There's our electrical saved plan view. Pretty simple. We've got an existing floor plan view. This is just demonstrating what an underlaid existing plan will look like when you use it as a referenced plan to your floor plan, which is just showing you the existing floor plan layer set is a dashed line. You can see the difference between the new versus the existing here. I do not do my demo plans on the new plan. I do it on my existing plan. So I use two separate plan files, an existing plan and a new plan. Here's our floor layout, furniture, no dimensions. Okay, and this is just going to show a floor overview with furniture. If I want to switch to that floor layout, furniture with dims, that's going to drive straight from my working plan view furniture layout. So that if I drew in, well, if we use our interior dimension tool and drew out some dimensions for this, there we go. Something else to note about the 1/4 inch interior decor dimension default is that it does measure to casing, but we need to go ahead and pull a camera view to take a look at my windows and doors, because by default you'll see that my windows and doors do not in fact have interior casing, and there's a specific reason for that. When I'm measuring in the field in as-built or existing conditions, I like to be able to measure in 3D, throw my window all the way to the corner, and then do an offset back from there. So because of that, I do not have casings. When you have casings, it will butt to that casing, and that's problematic for me. So because of that, I include with this template a tool, a couple quick tools, and we're going to just zoom in on these real quick. You're going to see here right at the bottom, they come with these two icons, an X which through what looks like a ceiling plane, and then a plus through what looks like a ceiling plane, so that if I want to delete the existing ceiling, that's a very easy thing to do. That's going to remove the ceiling and keep our roof intact, and we can add it back. Another thing that comes with this is a quick little wall covering. And it's color coded so that you can then repaint it to whatever you'd like, but it's a very fast and easy way of getting a wall covering into a room. I'm going to control Z out of that. And then the last part of this is that we're going to add moldings. We're going to add or delete moldings. So if I click on add moldings and click on the room, what's going to end up happening is, and let's just do it to the plan right here. It's going to add those casings to my windows. There we go. Now we have casings on the windows. Now we have casings on the doors. So very quickly, you can add casings back. They'll default to what they need to default to. And then if we get back into our saved plan view where we've got furniture here, and I want to get into that manual dimension tool, my manual dimension tools are very precise, which means that they will not pick up things that are too far away. So that if I draw it out here, it's only going to pick up those walls, okay? But if I draw it in tight next to those windows, look, it picks up that window casing because we're in the interior working plan. So there we go. It'll show that window casings dimensions. It's very precise. I like to do a tab or enter input to get my offset for those dimensions. And of course, you can do that continue on to carry through. So that if we switch to our floor layout furniture with dims, you're going to see those dimensions are retained. Look at that, looks pretty nice. And you're going to see in the floor plan that those dimensions are here as well. So keep that in mind. This is kind of meant to be dynamic for if you've got an interior decor project versus a new construction versus a remodel, you name it. These templates are really supposed to cover the gamut of what you may need them for. Go ahead and switch to foundation plan. Foundation plan is pretty straightforward. We're taking advantage of that new feature where we get to fill in that footing, so that footing looks nice and bold against the foundation plan. I like this look. Of course, you can edit this if you need to by going into your build menu and getting to that floor and then build foundation, and you can specify some things there. You can see by default, you can see my callouts are all, they show up on every floor level, just so you know. Framing floor plan, of course, we need to build framing. We have an option now in X-14 to build all framing. So there we go. Very quickly, you can see what my framing looks like. It's pretty nice. We'll switch up to that framing roof plan. You're going to see here, same thing. This is my roof plan. Of course, you can tweak this as you need to. This is just my particular standard. I do not personally show studs, so if you're like me and you don't like to see these wall framing members, you can always turn them off. HVAC plan is just standard from Chief. I did really very little modification to this. Same with our, our kitchen plan is specific. Our kitchen plan remembers a zoom that you have set, and then the kitchen plan defaults to a 1/2-inch cabinet. This is really meant to just be for kitchens. So if you also want to utilize a bath plan, it's nice to duplicate the kitchen plan and rename it to a bath plan. This works really well for those sets. Let's go ahead and take a look at my cabinets. I'm going to drop a cabinet in here. We'll actually drop in a tall cabinet in here. You're going to notice with the kitchen plan that it's set to a 1/2-inch text style in these labels. So you can see here underneath cabinet labels, you're going to see 1/2-inch text style is by default. If we switch to something like our floor plan, you're going to see those labels get pumped up. Now, if you're like me, you might want to actually turn the labels off in the floor plan, but I leave them on just in case that you may want them. So I like to turn them off because I always show in my kitchen plan my labels. And let's actually show a wall as well. Here's a wall cabinet. So kind of a brown schema. You can of course edit these in your defaults underneath cabinets, and here we go. Just looking in here underneath cabinets, you can see base cabinet, full height, and wall cabinet. You can edit these as you need to if you don't like this color scheme, or if you'd like to switch a couple things around. There's a little bit of a transparency in this wall fill, so hopefully take a look at, and you can see there's no labels in the working plan view. I like things to be really, really clean when I'm working and discovering things. Now, something you may see right now is that on the windows, there's a label here and it shows existing. That's because I am largely working in remodels, so that when I do my existing plan, after I resave it as a new, I go in and select all my windows, and then I'm going to edit those all together. I'm going to edit that label, and all I'm going to do is take away that E and then change it to an N for new. Simple enough. The other thing I do is that all my existing windows, I pull them out of my schedules, and then any new windows get put in a new plans schedule. Pretty self-explanatory there. Now, something you may have noticed right when you open things up is that we've got this detail here. Now, this detail is meant so that you can duplicate it and then relink it to whatever you may want. But this detail's got a leader arrow. If we open this up, you're going to see we've got a section arrow. That's where this is specified. So you could, of course, change that section arrow, number of different section arrow classifications. And then the call out itself, I name these individually until we get a new version of X-14 where we may, who knows, get a call out schedule, or we might get some additional macro tools. For now, I'm just naming these manually. But you'll see text below line is linked view layout page label, so that when you send the view that this call out points to your layout, it will retain that that label. So if we sent this to our A4 label, right, our A4 sheet, it's going to show D1 over A4. Now, if we double click on this, it's going to bring us into a CAD detail that this is pointing to. I just have this one linked to this particular CAD detail because it just makes sense. Now, this CAD detail does exist in the standard package. It's the only CAD detail I'm going to provide in the standard package. It gives you an example of how these things are built. But you'll notice if you're in the Pro package that almost every one of these items is actually a macro, and it's being driven from a macro designation. And we'll get into that in a minute. It's kind of a complex system that works really, really well and pretty easy to work with as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And there we go. Let's actually pull a camera view and take a look at what we've got going on here. So by default, I do have a backdrop. You should see this backdrop. If you're missing this backdrop, go ahead and let me know and I can provide that for you. Hopefully you do have it by default. And let's also drop in a backsplash. In fact, we'll just drop it all across this wall. Take a look at these, a couple of materials that are included in here. Got one of my flooring materials. I did not include one of my wall materials. I have way too many wall materials to include or pick any one, but you also have one of my custom doors saved by default so that if we switch into a PBR mode, it should look pretty good in here just right off the bat. Of course, you might want to drop in some lights as needed and to help that scene. But overall, it should look pretty good. I'm going to switch back to standard mode because it's hard for my computer to encode while I'm showing you a live PBR ray trace. But take a dive in, see what it looks like. Hopefully it's a pretty good looking set of materials. And of course, if you've ever downloaded my sidings pack that was free in a number of different locations, you can quickly get some pretty good looking homes using this template and those materials. I'm going to close this camera down now, and let's take a look at what we've got in our CAD details. I'm going to open up my project browser, and if you're in the Pro package, you're going to see a lot of details here, and you can see that they're named accordingly. So details, and you'll see in the preview window down here at the bottom what that detail may be. So we've got a number of really, really good ones here. Of course, here's a portal frame. Ooh, excuse me. Portal frame. That's a hard one to say. And they've all are conforming to a particular style that I use. So it's pretty apparent that I've drawn these in one particular style as you open these up. Of course, if you need a detail made, just give me a shout out. We can get one of these built. Now, what you're going to see here is that a lot of these items, just like this one, are built from a macro. So let's actually get into the project information macro designation section. It's going to look like this in your preview window. It may take a little bit of time to load depending on your system. It's got a lot of graphical things going on here, so it might be a little bit slow. Basically, to sum this up, is this detail on the right represents various details that live within your CAD details. They also represent various different macros that you could copy and utilize for yourself. It's very easy to just take one of these, copy it, paste it somewhere else, and conform its text style to anything that you want. When we open this up, what we're going to see here is, here's a macro called Vent Eve. Right here, macro called Wall Insulation. So that if I change these wall insulation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for this same kind of point out, right? This is pointing to this insulation right here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look for, well, this is pointing to that insulation here. So it's this call out is pulling from, and actually it's a note, is pulling from this note. So what we do is we just grab this leader, unconnect it from that R15 bat fill, and let's connect it to this R19 bat fill. And look what happens when we do this. There we go. Just needed to make sure it's connected. So there we go. I'm glad we just worked through a little hiccup. Just need to make sure that this is definitely connected. Something that's useful is if you go in and turn off all of your snaps and only leave, let's see, I believe your endpoint or your center snap. That might be helpful for navigating this particular window. But you can see there when we switched it to that R19, here's what we got, that R19 bat fill. Same thing, let's go ahead and grab, well, here we go, siding to match existing. We're going to find a leader that's pointing to siding. It's way down here. I can grab this and bring it up to that 7/8 inch stucco. And if I did it right, all I need to do is click on it there and it's going to update. Now, to kind of prove the point here, or take a look and check on some, to make sure that these things are doing exactly what they should be doing, here you go. Here's our typical wall detail. It changed to R19 bat fill. Very simply, this changed to that stucco. Let's go take a look at another one. I think I have a skylight detail. You probably see that, yep, this did in fact change to an R19 fill. So you can see this is dynamically changing all of the various details. You can always go in here and reuse these macros just by clicking on it, taking a look at what macro is being called out here, and then pasting it in a text box. You'll see off to the right here, there's some additional macros that you can utilize. There's some LUS 26 hangers here. We've got a wood strong wall. We've got just some gravel callouts. We've got a footing call out right here. And then I believe just one other call out right here. As codes change, it's nice to be able to just change these things on the fly. I'm going to go ahead and close this out and several of our details out. And then I want to get into, well, we've got schedules. Schedules live inside of our CAD details. You're going to see here, I have 2 points placed on either side of the schedule. That's to keep all schedules uniform in size, so that if for some reason one of these schedules gets oversized, you can always snap it back to that point. And this is so that it looks uniform on the page when you send it to layout. So this is a specific workflow of mine. I really like everything to be uniform in looks. Let's go ahead and get into our next project information section. What you're going to see here is we've got a little text box here. It's pointing to what seems like nothing. Send this to layout 0. That means layout page 0 after filling out project info for the client tag. What this means is, well, I want you to open this item up here. You're going to open this up, and then in the, well, and it says right here, input info into the object information panel under custom fields. So we'll get to the object information panel, and you're going to see in the custom fields section, we've got client name, client address, client city and state. Now you need to open this up for anything to happen. Once we've opened this up and we've inputted some things, what's going to happen from there is it's going to drive a few different macros. It's going to fire those macros off. And I will say that if you've sent these to layout, it's sometimes necessary, if you've got a revision set, to come back here and open this up. That's kind of the nature of macros. We need a reason for them to fire and engage, if you will, in layman's terms. It's not actually correct, but we'll just say it for now. So we see here we've got a client address, scope of work. Client address you don't need to touch. Scope of work, you should input your scope of work. And when we say okay to this, what ends up happening is everything gets updated in this project information section. And also, here we go. This is that tag I'm talking about. I like to put this on my page 0 so that it shows up on every page so someone knows, what that client information is. So I only need to type it in one time in one place, and it's everywhere I need it to be in my layout. So this is pretty helpful. I will say the climate zone macro is a specific macro to California only. It's built to look at this zip code that you input and automatically produce the climate zone, so I don't need to spend hours looking that up. So if you want me to build something similar for your local counties or municipalities, if you can just find some information about every zip code in your county municipalities and every associated climate zone, we can of course build a similar macro so that this does this automatically for you. Now what you're going to see next is some coverage, lot analysis, conditions, space, areas. I'm going to switch over to our plot plan so we can take a look at that. Now you see we switched over to our plot plan view, and you're going to see here we've got a couple of different polyline area boxes. Now these have some specific macros in them, and there's a specific way to utilize them. because we can't just do an eyedropper tool, they have specific macros in them. What we have to do is, if we want to do a lot analysis, we're going to have to click on that external room, right? Convert this to a polyline. Go ahead and drag this off if we'd like a specific dimension, or do point-to-point move back and forth if you'd like. I'm going to turn off the drawing sheet so we can see. And then I'm going to grab this existing coverage, drag it over so that it overlays, and I need one portion of this existing coverage polyline to break the plane of the new polyline we just created, and then we can unionize. Once we've unionized, you only need to conform this back and then simplify the polyline, and we've got our existing coverage mapped out. Now what you're going to see back in the project information, once you set lot size based on the actual lot size, new coverage, new condition space, existing condition space, any way you want to work that, you're going to see back in the project information that we've got a schedule based on those polylines. This works really fast and easy to do site analysis. It looks fantastic. In fact, I feel like this whole page looks fantastic when it is sent to layout. So this is a really nice feature of the Pro template. Unfortunately, this doesn't live in the standard template, but you know, you're welcome to purchase this as an add-on if you'd like. So, okay, now I want to look at one more portion of our CAD details section. Actually, it's two more portions. We're going to open up the changelog, and what you're going to see here is periodically I will be doing updates to these templates. They're not always perfect. There's so many settings that have been modified. There's over a couple hundred hours into these templates since these have been being built since X-13, believe it or not, into X-14 and rolled in with a lot of new features and a lot of things changes. A lot of things changed, and they're little tiny changes. They're changes to defaults, they're changes to materials, they're changes to, you know, any number of things with dimensioning, etc. So as I make changes, I do try to keep an up-to-date changelog. So since the first available X-14 that I was rolling out, we do have a changelog, and it's a very stout changelog. There's been a lot of things changed. So you can take a look at just how much work is going into these templates. All the little details that I cover, all the little details that I tweak with my team so that we get you the best product available. Now, we'll also want to get into video links. Video links, this is only going to bring you to another one of those links, and now we know how to utilize these links. Of course, you can just click on follow hyperlink, and what this is going to bring you to is it's going to bring you to my YouTube page, where it's going to show you a video that's associated with that particular item. So this particular video is how to add custom library objects to your toolbar, which is, you're going to need this video right off the bat just to get those wall tools in your toolbar, and also those custom add molding or delete molding tools in your toolbar. So please take a look in video links. As I do new updates, you're going to see new links in here. Right now there's only one, but there'll be more coming up pretty soon. So let's switch back. I want to touch on one more thing before we close this video out, which is I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about my dimensioning defaults. So let's hit cancel. Now we'll get into our working plan view, and I'm going to get back into just our manual dimension tool. And this is my particular workflow, how I like to dimension, which is I like to use the manual dimension tool, and you're going to see that it just populates dimensions just like the interior dimension tool used to. Now this is to the surface side at interiors. And again, if we punch that exterior dimensioning, it's going to be dimensioning to center line of all fenestration. It's very easy to double click on these and then go into define, and you can change any number of parameters. But this is my favorite setup so far. I really like the ease of use. So for 1/4 inch Rab's favorite, believe it or not, yep, it is my favorite. I use it for 90% of the dimensioning I need to do. It does work really, really well. So if we switch to an interior dimension side, there's a couple notes on what exactly the differences are. You're going to see here, we're not showing our wall widths when we use this. The other thing that will show up in the end-to-end dimension tools, we can dimension to these polyline solids. And then also with the interior dimension tool, this will dimension cabinets if you need to. So we do get a cabinet dimensioning with that interior dimensioning default versus the manual dimension tool, which will not dimension cabinets. Now, something that's true of all my dimension defaults, they need to be very accurate. You need to be very close to what you're measuring. You notice there, we didn't pick up that window. But if we do that in manual dimension again and run it right next to that window, it's going to pull that window dimension there. So all of my dimension defaults, you have to be very accurate about what you're dimensioning to. So oftentimes I may dimension to these cabinets per se with that interior dimension tool, right? And then maybe I want to come up here and continue on through like this. Now, another thing I might do is I might just leave this the way it is, and I might switch to on the fly something like my interior decor dimension defaults and draw in some new dimensions. And let's see, it's going to be that interior side. It's going to pick up that couch. There we go. So of course you can always click on these and get rid of them as you like and tweak them as you need to. I think that's it. I think we've covered most of the things that you may see. Of course, you can reach out to me if you've got some particular questions about these templates. These templates have a lot going on with them. We didn't even touch on our cross sections or wall elevation tools. But of course, those are pretty standard as well. You will see that I have my call outs here. And I only show a call out on the top side. The call outs are actually our construction lines. I did want to show you just how I use those construction lines before we close out. Getting into these construction lines, I like to use the extend and trim tools to drop my construction lines in here so that if I'm using my 1/4 inch all exterior dimensions, I want to make sure that these construction lines are outside of those dimension lines, right? So I want to line them up on one side so that they're just outside of that dimension string. And then on the right side, sometimes I need to shorten this or extend this. Let's just say, for instance, I've got a much bigger home, something like this. All I will do is draw a line, draw it to where I want my construction lines to show up to, select that line, and then I'm going to use my extend tool and draw through my construction lines. And then while I have it still selected, I can delete this. Of course, the trim tool works as well, so we can always just draw a line. We've got our construction lines too long, right? Then select that line, use that trim, and then draw a line through those construction lines. They're going to snap to that line, and then you can delete that as well. And how I use these construction lines, I go one by one, and I center it on a wall, just like that. Center it on the next wall. And very easily, we get our construction lines put in place right where they need to be, like these centered right on my walls. And there we go. Of course, these show up in different places like our foundation plan, our print set, so our floor plan, etc. But just the last thing to go over is that the working plan itself actually, excuse me, not the working plan, the floor plan itself actually doesn't save the floor that you're on. And there's a very specific reason for this. When you send this to layout, now we have a new macro, and that macro allows us to label according to what floor we are on, independent of the saved plan view that we're on. So we get a way of automatically labeling floor plans no matter how many floors you have on your floor plan, meaning that you can draw in your working plan view. This is a really complex idea to talk about. You can draw in your working plan view, draw on every floor that you want to, go up a floor, down a floor, doesn't matter. It's not going to bother anything. And then when you send your floor plan to view, let's just give it a shot. We're going to send this to a layout. And actually, I'm just going to cut this and put it on the next page so we can see. Oh, and it didn't let me. Let's try that again. I'm not getting anything. Okay. Let's try this again. We're going to send this to a view. Page number 2. So when we open this up and go to our label, what we can do here is in our callout label, we can actually say that this is, or actually doesn't even need to be in the callout label. Could be just in your attributes. You can see this automatic label. You can actually drop in another item here, which is object specific. We can say reference view floor number. So what I like to do is reference view floor number, type out in front of it level dash 1, reference view floor number, right? And then a space, level 1 floor plan. And what that's going to do, check this out. We're going to actually copy this. You can see here, there's that label, level 1 floor plan. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go to the next layout page. Let's delete this. And I'm going to paste. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open this up and get into that linked view, and we change that floor level. We can change it to the foundation level. And look at this. Now we've got level 0 floor plan. That way, we only need to have one floor plan saved plan view, which is a really dynamic way of doing things. So a lot of automation built into this template. A lot of thought went into this. Hope you enjoy it. Of course, we've got cross-section cameras. They're already established. You can find those in your project browser. So if you open up your project browser, you can see a bunch of different cameras in there. So front elevation, left elevation, you can see those in the preview window. Let's just double click on one of these, take a look. And let's fill window building only. There we go. A little bit to find that, but here we go. And by default, I have this as the standard rendering method. You may prefer a vector view, totally up to you. You might want to adjust your shadows down for your vector view as well, shadow intensity. Find that something around 20% works really well for a print set. I personally have been doing digital sets, so I like this standard view, but of course you can change this if you need to. And that's the close of this video. Of course, drop me some comments, drop me any questions you may have. I'm here to help as best I can, time available.